Hi everyone and welcome back to Coachy TV. This is going to be the first of a two-part series on long hill strength runs. We're going to talk about the science behind these types of workouts in this video, and then tomorrow we'll release another video where we talk about the actual training design. I'm Kyle Giacono. I'm the head boys cross country and track coach at Wharton High School in Tampa, Florida, and I have been for the last 6 years. My credentials are on the screen if you'd like to take a closer look. So there are five motor performance abilities, five basic things that everybody needs when they're doing something athletically. Flexibility is the ability to move your joints effectively. This is pretty much going to be done during a lot of your workouts when you're doing either a pre or post workout stretch. So this is typically not a focus of anything in terms of track and field and cross country by the very nature that it's not something that's very important on any individual scale. You need to have some sort of flexibility, but it's not overly important to where it might be for another sport, like gymnastics or dance or something like that, where it would be much more important. So this is something you do sort of ancillary to training these other motor performance abilities. We've got speed, which is the capacity to move the body very quickly, and it uses both of the anaerobic systems. Coordination, which permits synchronization of two or more body parts, which is an outcome of how the brain directs those body parts. So it's both neurological and it's neuromuscular. It's both of those things together. It's how your brain talks to your muscles and how your muscles actually operate. These are things that distance runners typically have more of an issue with just because they do more repetitive things over and over again. And this would be more like what you might call overall athleticism, for lack of a better term. It's how you kind of put all the pieces together. And this is something important to any athletic competition. We've got endurance, which is the ability to do any given work intensity over a long period of time. It could be low intensity, it could be higher intensity, and this is going to use the aerobic system because of the overtime part, and it can use the anaerobic systems depending on the overall intensity demand. And we've got strength, which is just force produced. This is regardless of speed of movement. You can produce more force if you give more time or more time to move or develop the actual force. And then there's other types of force that has to be produced very quickly. This is more plyometric, which is some of the things we're talking about here. Typically in sports, you have very little time to use your strength. So typically you want to be more ability to have strength within the actual context of your athletic competition, as opposed to just, can you deadlift a ton of weight if you give unlimited amount of time to do it. So one of the things that you want to do is make it very specific to your event. Obviously, the art of coaching is how do you put these five things together. We mentioned how flexibility is usually very much ancillary to track and field and cross country, but get done kind of throughout, but is very, very limited in terms of being the overall focus of an actual event. We're going to focus on these two here together when we're talking about long hills, both endurance and strength. These are two things that are typically trained separately. Now, in our workout video, we talked about short hills, and if you didn't see those, they're in the description down below. We talked about training speed and strength together. Those are typically trained together because they both use the anaerobic systems. Endurance and strength, typically when you're doing something aerobically or for endurance reasons over a period of time, the intensity is typically pretty low. That's usually the inverse relationship. If intensity is very high, the actual volume or the amount of work is low, and then reversed, if the intensity is very low, the volume of work is typically high. These workouts are very, very intense, and we're going to talk about this in the training design about where you would slot these into your training year. These are training two things together that typically are not, because we're going to ask for high strength and endurance to be used in these, so we have to really be careful about how we do these things. We're also going to look at coordination because we're going to have a slight incline here, so your body's going to have to be more used to striking the ground with confidence, and this is really going to help things. Now, again, in the other workout series, we talked about speed and strength being trained together. We'll talk about this more so in the training design video tomorrow, but we're not training speed here because of the amount of time that's really being asked for a long hill. But typically this is done later in the training year, where you're going to be training speed a little bit more on its own, on their own days, on flat ground. We use short hills earlier in the training year to kind of get some of these other things together when you're pretty much focusing more on just aerobic buildup in your general prep and specific preparation phases. So those short hill workouts we talked about before, yes, do train speed and these do not. But the idea is you're getting those in other workouts now when you start adding in this long hill type of workout. So let's talk a little about the endurance race specific demands. So there's two things going on in this chart. Everything that has to do with the energy supply, the right-hand side of your column, is based on a study done by Matter and Hartman in 2018, which was a groundbreaking study that really looked at where the supply of energy is coming from an athlete, both anaerobically and aerobically. It went out of its way to really look at not total amount of waste products from these energy systems produced, but it did it actually in intervals throughout the workouts, so it was much more accurate than any study that's gone before. So if these are not exactly the way you've kind of seen them, maybe if you looked at studies from more the early 2000s or late 90s, it's because this was done with fantastic groundbreaking research methods that really gave a better idea of what's happening in the body with these energy demands. And the VO2 max numbers that are right here are based on USATF's overall distance curriculum. So when we take a look here, VO2 max for the marathon, you're obviously running this. This is your 2 mile pace. This is your maximum ability to use oxygen. And when you're running the marathon, you're running it at 82% of your VO2 max. Your supply of energy is 2 to 5% from the anaerobic systems, and your aerobic supply, not surprisingly in a marathon, is 95 to 98%. You've got the 10,000. Things get a little bit more dicey here just because you have different people sort of running these. You have 800-meter kids moving up to run them in maybe a cross-country season in college and things like that. So there's usually a bigger spread. But when you get down to the 5,000, it gets to be a little bit more right at VO2 max, 97%. Your anaerobic supply is 14% of the energy demands, and 86 of your energy supply is coming aerobically. You get a little bit shorter; it gets closer to be run right at VO2 max, and this makes sense that the 3K is run almost right at VO2 max because this is basically your 2 mile pace or your 10-minute pace. 20% of the supply is anaerobic, and 80% of your energy supply is aerobic, and these are run at race intensity. So if you were to go out and walk a 3,000, it would be 100% aerobic, or mostly 100% aerobic, and it would not be at VO2 max. These are all basically at race intensities, as best possible effort. There's nothing specific about this distance. It's not that if you went out and walked it or crawled it that you would still run these. This has to be at your maximum race intensity. The 1500 is run a little bit faster, 110 to 112% VO2 max, 28% anaerobic, a little bit more here, and a little bit less aerobic because of the nature of the race being shorter. It's a little bit faster. The 800, the reason why there's such a big range here, because this is done looking at professional and semi-professional and things like that. This 120 would be probably more your 3,000 meter person moving up, or your 5,000 person really moving up. And that's why it's run at a lower percentage of their VO2 max, because a distance person going to an 800 is going to be running closer to their VO2 max. This is more of when David Rudisha went and broke the world record in the 800, this is more of a 400-meter person moving up, and that's where this number comes from. It's why there's such a big range here, because so many different people run the 800 in the same way that the 10,000 has a bigger range because of the different people that do it. So basically, a distance person is going to be at 120. A sprinter moving up is going to be at 136. The anaerobic supply is 40%. The aerobic supply is 80%. This is why you would train an 800-meter person very differently than you would train a 5K person. The 400 is not tested in terms of its VO2 max. There's just too many variables with sprinters in this case and where they are aerobically, and the anaerobic to aerobic supply. So, races that are closer to run at VO2 max are going to benefit most from this. Basically, from your 10,000 to your 1,500 are going to benefit the most from this type of workout, because this is basically going to be close to a VO2 max workout with the incline. However, there is going to be some benefit from an 800-meter runner. Now, when you go and start mixing these in, maybe you do a workout or two less of this or fewer of this. You're only going to do probably 4 or 5 of these a year anyway, so maybe your 800-meter kid doing this might do it 3 times, something like that. Just be smart about, again, the specific demand and what type of 800-meter kid it is. If it's a 400-meter kid that you want to move up and run 800s, maybe you only give them this workout 2 or 3 times. Maybe they're just not ready for it at all because this is very aerobically demanding. A 3,200 or 3,000 meter kid moving down to maybe the 800 this year, maybe you think they're going to be better in that area. You might give it to them. You might give it to them 5 times. It just depends on the kid and what you're trying to get from them. This is going to add a very different aspect to their aerobic development, because you're adding the strength aspect to their aerobic energy demands, and this is something that's very often not trained together. So designed adaptations of long hill intervals. What are we trying to do here with these workouts? So primarily this is a strength run. We're trying to develop their overall strength. We're trying to increase their force production, okay, how they strike the ground, and the uphill is going to make them have to strike the ground much more so. And it's sort of a misnomer to say that this is a strength run, only to say that all runs are strength runs. If you're running, you're putting 3 times your body, if you're just doing an easy run, 3 times your body weight with each strike, and that takes a lot of strength to do. What we're doing here is we're making it more of an emphasis, more of a strength run. The higher intensity, the higher force that they need to get up the hill at these fast paces that we're going to talk about, mean that you're probably striking the ground with 5 times your body weight. So a lot of strength has to be involved here to propel you forward up that hill. You're going to get high heart rate, probably over 180. If you were to have them check at the end of each rep, it's probably going to be over 30. It probably should be over 30. That's one of the adaptations we're looking for here. You're going to have elastic strength. We talked about strength before in the context of you want to be able to use it quickly. You're not going to have unlimited time to respond in a race to what your competitor is doing. And elastic strength, or this plyometric type of work, allows you to be quick with your strength. You're not going to be using maximal strength, but the ability to be elastic in your strength. And your contractile power is going to be much higher. How your muscles basically contract are going to be developed here. The aerobic development, and this is endurance in terms of motor performance abilities, it's going to train both your VO2 max and your aerobic capacity. Your reps are going to be near max effort or near 98 to 102% VO2 max. Now, you're not going to get targets like I gave you with aerobic power, and if you missed the workout series, it's in the description down below. Because the hill's going to change everything. But you want them to be as strong and consistently fast on these as possible. And even though it might not be at their VO2 max on flat ground, because they're going up the hill, their body is pretty much going to be working at VO2 max. So you're getting that part of their training. But this is going to call for active recovery, jogging between reps. So it's almost going to be continuous on the rest interval period. So it's going to be near continuous runs, so you're going to get some aerobic capacity. These are longer reps. You're going to get about 20 to 30 minutes of continuous running here. And then last thing, running mechanics, and this is coordination in terms of motor performance abilities. This is about ground preparation mechanics. The fact that it's uphill, they're going to have to become very confident in how they strike the ground. The very slight incline that we're going to talk about here of 2 to 3% is going to teach correct knee lift. It's not just going to be jacking your knees up as high as you can. It's going to be very race specific. And it's going to teach effective and efficient arm carriage. They're going to have to bring their arms down and use the full swing of their arms as they're doing this in order to really effectively get up that hill. So those are the science reasons why it says we should be doing these workouts. Tomorrow we'll release a video where we talk about the actual training design, how you're actually going to accomplish this in the workout. If you did like this video, please think about liking or subscribing and commenting down below. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask them in the comment section down below. And if you have any ideas for future videos that you'd like to see, please go ahead and also ask us in the comments down below. Until next time, this has been Coachy TV.